Hello, everyone. Nora here. It's late, and the world is quiet. I'm looking out at the city skyline right now, and it looks beautiful. All those towering glass buildings, glowing softly against the dark sky. From a distance, they look completely normal. They look powerful. But tonight, I want you to look a little closer at those lights. Because behind those gleaming windows, something very strange and deeply unsettling is happening. Something that involves trillions of dollars, thousands of empty rooms, and a slow, silent collapse that most people haven't even noticed yet. We are living through an invisible financial catastrophe. You see, for the last 50 years, we've treated downtown office buildings as the ultimate safe investment. Better than gold, safer than cash, more secure than government bonds. If you had money, you put it in concrete and glass. But right now, there is $3 trillion of commercial real estate debt sitting on the balance sheets of regional banks across the country, and the underlying assets, the buildings themselves, are essentially empty. Tonight, we're going to walk through the hollow corridors of the modern ghost citadels, and explore exactly how a single shift in how we work is silently pulling the rug out from under the global financial system. Let's start with a simple, terrifying number. Before the defining shifts of the early 2020s, office vacancy rates in major financial hubs hovered around a very healthy 9%. It was just natural turnover. Today, in places like San Francisco, Chicago, and even parts of Manhattan, that number has quietly crept up to, and in some cases exceeded, 25%. Wait, let me rephrase that. 1 out of every 4 offices in the absolute most expensive, prestigious real estate markets on Earth is completely, utterly empty. Just collecting dust, silent floors with unplugged coffee machines and dead server rooms. When you have a skyscraper that is a quarter empty, it's not simply a wealthy landlord's problem. You see, these buildings were bought at premium, sometimes hyperinflated prices using massive amounts of borrowed money. Imagine, if you will, buying a $200 million tower. You only put down $50 million of your own money, and you borrow the remaining $150 million from a regional bank. Your plan is brilliantly simple: collect high, long-term rents from established tech companies and prestigious law firms, pay the bank their steady interest, and pocket the rest. It's the classic leveraged real estate model that built modern cities. But what exactly happens when the 5-year leases finally expire, and those massive tenants simply don't renew? They've realized their employees are just as productive working from their living rooms, 3 states away. They don't need a corner office anymore. Suddenly, your rental income falls by 30, maybe even 40%. But your monthly mortgage payment to the bank? That hasn't dropped a single cent. In fact, due to the central bank's aggressively rising interest rates over the last few years, your payments actually went up dramatically. You are bleeding millions of dollars in cash every single quarter. Let's put this devastating reality into perspective. A prestige building in downtown Los Angeles that was definitively appraised at $300 million just 5 years ago recently sold on the open market. Care to guess the final clearing price? It didn't sell for $200 million. It didn't even sell for $100 million. It sold for barely $60 million. We are looking at a valuation collapse of roughly 80% on what was universally supposed to be a Tier 1 bedrock asset. An 80% wipeout of wealth, vanished into thin air. Now, you might be thinking, well, Nora, I don't own a skyscraper, and I don't work in one either, so why should I lose sleep over this? And I completely don't blame you for thinking that. It feels like a remote problem strictly for billionaires and private equity funds. But here is the terrifying catch. The entities that lent the money to buy these buildings weren't just the massive Wall Street titans. Mostly, they were regional, mid-sized community banks. The exact same banks where everyday people keep their checking accounts, the same banks that provide vital loans to local bakeries, auto shops, farmers, and plumbers. As the old, cynical saying goes in high finance, if you owe the bank $1 million, you have a massive personal problem. If you owe the bank $1 billion, the bank has a massive institutional problem. And right now, Commercial real estate developers owe regional banks roughly $1.5 trillion that is coming due very, very soon. A wall of maturities that cannot possibly be rolled over under current conditions. When a developer defaults because they cannot refinance their underwater building, they just throw the keys back to the bank and walk away. The regional bank is now the proud, unwilling owner of an empty, severely depreciating skyscraper. And banks do not want to own real estate. They are not property managers. Furthermore, they have incredibly strict federal regulations requiring them to keep a certain amount of liquid cash on hand based on their perceived risk. If the value of their commercial real estate portfolio crashes by 80%, their balance sheets instantly become deeply insolvent. To survive and avoid being shut down by the FDIC, these banks have to fiercely hoard cash. This means they must immediately stop lending money to everyone else. The local bakery can't get a short-term loan to buy a new, more efficient oven. The expanding auto shop can't get the capital to open a second location. Families trying to get mortgages face impossible interest rates and massive down payment requirements. This is what macroeconomists call a severe credit crunch. It's a slow, agonizing suffocation of the broader economy. The empty building standing in the heart of the thriving city silently, continuously chokes off the critical capital blood supply to the distant suburbs. And what makes this particular crisis so fascinating, and frankly quite unnerving, is how incredibly quiet it all is. When the housing market violently crashed in 2008, there were ugly foreclosures on every street corner. Families were being evicted with their belongings on the sidewalk. It was loud, deeply emotional, highly political, and overwhelmingly visible to everyone. But commercial real estate? It happens entirely behind closed, mahogany doors. It happens on Excel spreadsheets, balance sheets, and dry quarterly earnings reports. The buildings themselves just sit there, beautiful, majestic, and completely empty. The security lights still turn on at night, programmed by automated grid systems, creating an eerie illusion of life and activity. They are essentially architectural zombies, dead financial entities that are still, somehow, walking around in the system, waiting for the inevitable reckoning. Some ambitious city planners are desperately trying to convert these towers into residential apartments. It sounds like a beautifully perfect solution on paper, right? A clear win-win for urban housing shortages and empty downtown offices. But actually, wait. It is incredibly, astronomically difficult to execute. Office buildings have massive, unbroken floor plates, meaning the spaces deep inside get absolutely no natural light. Their plumbing, sewage, and HVAC systems are centralized for open floors, not uniquely designed for hundreds of individual, separated apartments. The immense cost of retrofitting these structures almost always completely exceeds the raw cost of just tearing the entire building down and starting from scratch. And let's consider what this means for the fabric of the city itself. When a skyscraper sits empty, the coffee shop downstairs loses its morning rush. The dry cleaner on the corner loses its steady stream of corporate clients. The food trucks that used to line the streets at noon have to find new routes, and often, they simply go out of business entirely. These massive concrete structures anchor an entire ecosystem. Their sudden emptiness creates a devastating economic vacuum that actively sucks the life out of everything in a 5-block radius. Tax revenues plummet, public transportation funds dry up, and the city itself begins to hollow out from the inside, leaving local governments desperately trying to plug a multi-billion-dollar budget deficit with no visible end in sight. It is a slow-motion urban crisis happening largely in silence. So, we are permanently stuck in this strange liminal space. A high-stakes, multi-trillion-dollar staring contest between desperate landlords holding out hope that major companies will furiously mandate their workers back to the cubicles, and terrified bank executives praying the landlords can make just one more monthly interest payment. But the unforgiving clock of time is decisively against them. Over the next 18 to 24 months, a truly massive, unprecedented wave of this specific commercial debt has to be legally refinanced. And it will absolutely have to be refinanced at today's much higher interest rates, for buildings that are now worth half, or less, of what they were when the ink dried on the original contracts. something has to break. It's a slowly unfolding, multi-act drama, tragically written in concrete, reflective glass, and catastrophic red ink. And it reminds all of us that absolutely no asset category is truly fail-proof forever. Sometimes, the most incredibly dangerous things in the entire global economy aren't the volatile, fast-moving, highly publicized tech stocks or complex crypto derivatives. Sometimes, the greatest dangers are the quiet, empty rooms sitting perfectly still in the dark. Thank you for spending a part of your late night here with me. Get some much-needed rest, try not to worry too much about the cascading numbers, and let the quiet of the night finally settle in. I'll see you in the next one. Good night.